Welcome along to the weekend warm-up on the Winners' Enclosure. This week it's myself and Martin Dixon, my brother, looking ahead to the action. Emma Spencer, a later withdrawal than Mahafa in the derby, so you're left with the two of us to look ahead to the weekend action. Ahead of Royal Ascot, it can sometimes be a fairly low-key weekend, but there is some fairly competitive stuff going on nonetheless.
Yeah, there's some good cards, isn't there? It's not quite as hot as it has been for the last four to 6 weeks. I think it's fair to say. But like you say, with Royal Ascot around the corner, Chris, you don't really expect that, do you? And we're soon back into it with Ascot and Newmarket's big meeting, and then Goodwood. It's sort of thick and fast all the time, isn't it, in the flat season? But no, some decent stuff on the weekend. York have got a card with some competitive racing. Sandown's the same. And some of the handicaps in particular, plenty of those that we'll be looking at, will be very competitive betting races, to be fair.
Yeah, I think they will. Some of the fields are a little bit thinner than they might be on your average Saturday, just because of Royal Ascot being around the corner and some horses being saved for that. We'll have a look at the Sky Bet Grand Cup as we go along. Only 4 runners in that listed race. But we're going to start with York on Saturday. Opening race on the card is the Queen Mother's Cup. Big race for the lady amateur riders, this one. 8 runners declared to go to post for it. It's over 1.5 miles. Nicholas T, he caught the eye at Hamilton on his penultimate start. And then I thought he ran all right, really, in the Zetland Gold Cup up at Redcar on his most recent start. So he probably comes into this with a decent chance for Jim Goldie.
Yeah, there's a few veterans in there, isn't there? Nicholas T, you mentioned. He'll be amongst the favourites. I think he deserves to be as well, Chris. I'd say he'd have a pretty good chance of winning the race. Nicholas T. Byron Flyer is another veteran who's dropped to a potentially handy mark. Serena Brotherton, who seems to have been around forever, doesn't she? But she still rides plenty of winners in these amateur races. She takes the ride on Byron Flyer. Nicholas T, I would say, would be about the likeliest winner of the race, but I expect that the bottom horse, Arctic Fox, could go overlooked a little bit in this. I think she might end up being a decent price, and maybe even an each way price with the dead 8 runners. So I'm looking towards number 8, Arctic Fox, for Martin Todhunter. Becky Smith takes the ride. I think she's been champion female amateur on a couple of occasions. She's really good in this type of races, and would certainly be a positive to Arctic Fox's chance. And quite like the way this filly closed up late at Ayr last time out. She only got into mid-div in an 8-runner race at Ayr, but she was coming from right out the back. She was only beaten 4.5 lengths and finished off with running left at the line. That was over 1.25 miles. She's back up to the 1.5 miles. And if you go back to last summer, she finished 4th in a good quality 0 to 95 handicap over this course and distance from a £6 higher mark than what she's going to race off on Saturday. So I think with Becky Smith taking the ride, that encouraging run last time out, and the backup in trip, Arctic Fox will be a player in this, and I think she could be a fair price.
Yeah, I've gone for the same horse as well, funnily enough. Just another factor to add into the mix. I did like that run at Ayr last time out, but as much as anything, I think that they've really laid Arctic Fox out for this particular race. The last time this race was run, they didn't run it last year because of COVID, but the last time this race was won, Arctic Fox was trained by Richard Fahey and won it off a mark of 84. So now £7 lower. That good York run last year as well. This seems to be the track where she really can find her form. And I just think that the Todhunter team have had their eye on this race. The fact that they've booked Becky Smith for it as well, I think a big point. And there's no doubt that she is a well-handicapped mare. Another one that I'd just throw into the mix very quickly is Civil Law, who's booted up the handicap for that win on the all-weather at Newcastle last time out, but did do it quite well. That was over 10 furlongs, and going up to 1.5 miles, I think will bring about a little bit of improvement in Civil Law. So I'd throw him into the mix as well for the Brian Ellison stable. But I think we're both with Arctic Fox in the Queen Mother's Cup, which opens up the action on the Knavesmire on Saturday. We move quickly on to the 2:35 second race on the card at York on Saturday. And an interesting enough runner in this, I suppose, Mart, is Dazzling Dan, who was a winner at Yarmouth a couple of starts ago, capitalising off a falling handicap mark. But that wasn't the deepest of races that he won, was it? And this probably is a little bit better.
Yeah, I think it is better. Although he did run well again, didn't he? In a stronger, more competitive race behind Amethyst at Newmarket on the Rolling Mile last time out, Dazzling Danny. He's still got some handicapping scope on his very best form. National League, he's likely to go pretty well, I'd say, for Richard Fye and Paul Hannigan, who have loads of winners on the Knavesmire, of course. But I quite liked Roger Fell's Admiralty. Now, we haven't discussed this. I'm hoping that in this instance you might disagree with me. But Admiralty for Roger Fell, and Jason Hart's going to take the ride. This is a really well handicapped horse on last year's form. The handicap has dipped him down into the 80s again. He's off a mark of 88. You go back to last summer, he was runner-up 4 times on the spin, including in the Air Silver Cup off a mark of 90. So he's a couple of pounds lower than when he was second in the Air Silver Cup. He's got good York form over this course and distance. And although he's finished second a good few times, I don't think he's a horse that does anything wrong in terms of his attitude. He's just been involved in some really competitive races along the way. So Admiralty, nice slot in stall 6 to just be able to chase the pace along. And I think that last time out, the ground conditions were just too testing for him. So I'd forgive that and back on a sounder surface of the track where he's run really well before. I think Admiralty will go well.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. I'm going to look back to a previous winner at Ayr as well, and a horse that, like Admiralty, doesn't really win very often. I was struggling to get right behind anything in this race, really. I think National League is of some interest. Gifted Ruler is unexposed if they've got him ready. Golden Apollo, I'm probably a little bit mad, and he is a tricky customer, isn't he? But when he gives his running, he's more than capable in a race like this. And given the way that he shapes so often, it's a little bit of a surprise that he's always seemingly campaigned over 6 furlongs. He doesn't get too many runs over the 7 furlong trip, and he has run well, I think, in this race in the past. I think he was 5th in it a couple of years back. That year later on, he went on and won the Air Silver Cup, but he didn't show much on his return to action at Haydock. But then you don't really expect him, Easterby's horses, to show a massive amount on the first start of the season. And I just thought that up in trip, Ella McCain, who's riding really well, taking £5 off, a race where I didn't want to get right behind anything. I thought I'd just take a bit of a chance at what is likely to be a decent price on Golden Apollo, who, yes, he's tricky, but he's also capable. He's on a winning handicap mark. And if he decides to put it all in, then I think he could run well. So it's Golden Apollo for me, Admiralty for Martin in the 235. 305 Sky Bet Grand Cup, only the 4 of them for this, including the winner last time it was run, Red Verdon.
Yeah, that's right. We can make this fairly snappy. I think it's going to be quite an unappealing betting race, Chris, to be honest with you. But I think the top horse, Ranch Hand, would be, for my money, the likeliest winner anyway. Just maybe could get a solo on the front end under Asheen Murphy. That's the angle, I think, really. There's not an awful lot between these on their best form necessarily, but Ranch Hand does at least come into the race in good form. And as I say, maybe Asheen will be able to get a solo out in front. And if he can, then he's going to be pretty dangerous on Ranch Hand.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Macawy for David O'Mara. I just think she's solid. She'll run a race. They might not go quick enough for her, but hopefully she can just get wound up soon enough, really. She'll probably track through Ranch Hand, who, as you say, is likely to make the running, and hopefully Jim Crowley gets a tune out of her and she can drop her head in front. She had an option of going to Royal Ascot next week as well, but this cutting up seemed a better option, so I'm going to go with Macawy in that Sky Bet Grand Cup draw for 3. 340 is the Pavers Foundation Catherine Memorial Sprint Handicap. Big field for this one, over 6 furlongs. Start with a look at Blind Beggar. What did you make of that win at Catterick on really deep ground in a maiden last time?
Yeah, I don't mind this horse, actually. I know he took ages to get off the mark, but he had some really good runs to his name last year in maidens, a really good run on his only start in handicap company when he was just beaten half a length at Haydock. And it did take him ages to get off the mark, but he bumped into Twilight Spinner at Ripon 2 starts back. That was a hell of a run, really, in hindsight. Twilight Spinner going on to win a listed race, and then he dotted up in a fast time in the mud last time at Catterick. It just might be that he does want more testing ground to be at his very, very best. That would be the only issue I'd have, and that would be why I would sidestep Blind Beggar. I think he is going to be of interest over the course of the season, but conditions are going to be pretty slick at York on Saturday. So I'm not sure it'll work in his favour in what is a very, very competitive race. I'm going towards a horse drawn in stall 2, number 9 on the card, Dark Shift. We in agreement?
Yeah, I'll let you go. Why you're going with him, and I won't add much.
Well, I do really like this horse. I was at Nottingham when he won last time out. He beat a horse called The Day to Remember, who's obviously bolted up since. I'm sure you've noticed the same thing. But as much as that, the Ascot debut win last season was a seriously good performance. He absolutely dotted up that day. He didn't have any experience going into it on his debut, and he beat a horse called Twilight Calls, who I think is pretty good, pretty smart. And he managed to beat Twilight Calls by 4 lengths on his racecourse debut, which for my money marks him down as a really smart prospect. He's only got a mark of 88. It's a high mark, admittedly, but I think this might be a pattern horse. So Dark Shift for me to take the beating from what could be an ideal draw as well in stall 2, near a couple of the front runners in that 340 at York.
Yep, I like where he's drawn as well. I just think that he could be very well handicapped, this fella. So expect a big run from him under Danny Suddup. I actually think probably, Mark, he's potentially one of the better bets of the weekend. We'll move on to Sandown. 2:15 is the Coral beaten by length free bet Scurry Stakes. This is a listed contest over the 5 furlong trip. We're going to be a little bit biased to some degree here because our horse, Warrior Brave, is lining up. Looking at the very early prices, he's the second favourite. The quite short price favourite for it is Atalis Bay for Marco Botti and Andrea Azzeni. And he won a race that Warrior Brave was in behind in at Nottingham a couple of starts ago.
Yeah, we'll start with Warrior Brave because he's a good horse, isn't he? We've had loads of fun with him. We bought him last year from Ireland. He's won 3 of his 5 starts for us. He keeps going the right way, and we think there's more to come. So he's going to have a chance. We're throwing him in here and expectant of a good run and expecting that he'll be competitive and be able to. Basically, off level weights is going to be quite hard to beat. He won that race at Nottingham when Warrior was in behind him. Warrior Brave was soundly enough beaten that day, wasn't he? And Atalis Bay was actually conceding £4 to us. So Atalis Bay continues in good form. He does set the standard, and I think in what is quite a tight group in behind him, he does set the clear standard. And I think all things being equal, he's going to be pretty hard to beat, the Botti horse. But hopefully Warrior goes and runs well. And I think, like me, you'd be expecting that he does run well, I think.
Yeah, I am. I think that there's a few of them that you don't know whether or not they'll show their form. If they do, then they're going to have a good chance. But there are reasons to doubt whether or not they will, and 1 or 2 of them probably will. I do think that Atalis Bay is going to be quite hard to beat, but tipping wise, I'm going to go Warrior Brave each way. I'm pretty sure he's going to run well. I like the fact that he's going onto a stiff 5 furlong track because I think he finished off his race well over a sharp 5 at Goodwood last time out. We know that he stays 6, and I'd just be surprised if he didn't go and run his race. And I think we're at a different point now to what we were when Atalis Bay beat us at Nottingham. He got a bit unbalanced on the track that day, did Warrior Brave. He just hit a ridge at the midpoint of the race, really, and that probably didn't help him. He just lost his equilibrium a little bit. So Atalis Bay hard to beat, but I'm going to stick with a Warrior each way and hope for a big effort from him and that we get a chance to shout him home. What about the 250 on the card? We've got a fairly competitive looking handicap over a mile here. A horse that has been in good form recently for Charlie Hills is King's Knight, and he travels into races like he's going to do some damage at some point.
Yeah, he does. He's a strong travelling horse. That would just be a minor concern for me. He's stepping up a little bit in trip, isn't he, to a full back up to a full mile, and a stiff mile like Sandown. I think he's a well handicapped horse, King's Knight, and he'll go well. But it's just whether he might just be vulnerable to something that's a slightly stouter stayer, really. I wondered if Repertoire could go well for David Simcock. He's a horse that used to be with André Fabre in France. He came over with a high rating. It was a bit of a Mickey Mouse contest that he won at Wolverhampton earlier on in the season, but he ran very well at Ascot on his penultimate start behind Kaiser Soze when he got caught a little bit too far out of his ground. at Ascot. This looks like it's going to be quite a strongly run race. The likes of Rhubarb Bikini are in there. Dogged will probably not be far away, maybe Alexander James. So there should be a good pace on. And I think that might suit Repertoire if he's ridden in that sort of way that he was at Ascot in his penultimate start. So he's on a handy enough mark, I would say. And it just looked like a stiff mile in a well-run race might suit him.
Yeah, I'm going to go Buxted too, who I think had an excuse on account of the ground last time out at this track. Before that, he ran a couple of good enough races, really, particularly so on his reappearance run around here. So I think that was a solid enough effort. I know that the second place finish would have been a third if it wasn't for Rifleman swerving and getting rid of his rider, but that was a good effort. And Stabler in very good form. He'll get a fairly prominent pitch, which I think is an advantage around here. He's got David Egan on top, really good young rider. And I just think that the track could suit him. It wouldn't be a strong view by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought Buxted 2 might just be the way to go. We move on to Chester. A couple of races to look at for you there. We'll start with the 140. This is a sprint handicap for the 3-year-olds. There's a few of these races going on. There's the listed race, there's the good race at York, there's the big handicap, of course, at Royal Ascot for the 3-year-olds next week, the Palace of Holyrood. So one of the races at least was going to give way a little bit. It's this one that has only attracted a 5-strong field. I thought Virginia Plain had all the attributes, really, Mark, to be a suitable horse for a small field around Chester.
Yeah, she does, doesn't she? She's the way to go, I think. I think you're probably going to agree here that stall 2, horse on the inside, Have a Go Mecca, can miss the brakes, likely to clear Have a Go Mecca early on. Bag that far rail at Chester, small field, 5 furlongs around there. The place you want to be is out in front. She's seriously fast. It's a track that'll play to her strengths. And the form of her Goodwood placed effort on her most recent start has worked out really well. So she's probably going to be a short price. If she's not a short price, then she wants to be, because she's going to have an awful lot in her favour, I think, Virginia Plain. I expect she'll take some catching around there on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. What about the 320 on the card at Chester? We've got a 1.5 mile handicap, and a previous course winner must have a good chance in this. Love is Golden. Yeah,
Love is Golden goes for Mark Johnston. We know what a strong hand he has with the 3-year-old middle distance horses. As you said, won at Chester back at the May meeting, wasn't it? That was on easier ground. Now, that would just be a little bit of a worry again. The ground's going to be quick, and Love is Golden has won twice in his career so far, but both of his wins have been on what time form at least have called good to soft ground. So that's just a slight concern for Love is Golden. I quite like the chance of the Andrew Balding horse, Classic Lord, but similarly, he's got some ground concerns. So if you're looking for the fast ground, this isn't a race I've got a really strong opinion on, in all fairness, but if you're looking for something that will be suited by a sound surface, I wondered if the David Simcock horse, Man of Riddles, might be a lot better suited to this than the soft ground that he ran on in a listed race on his most recent start. He was a debut winner for David Simcock when he was tight in the market, and he doesn't have an awful lot of debut winners, David Simcock, so that marked him down as a decent prospect, I thought. And the ground was probably just too deep for him last time out at Goodwood. So he starts out in a handicap off a mark of 80. If you look at the promise of his debut and the way that he won that day, he could be a fair bit better than 80. Jamie Spencer goes up to Chester for the ride as well. And yeah, I think Man of Riddles is still a horse with potential for this sound surface. I do like the first two the other two in the race that have been in form, Love is Golden and Classic Lord, but I just wonder whether on this likely faster surface, they might not show their best form.
Yeah, I think that is a slight concern. I was leaning towards Love is Golden to a degree, because I just think that he's going to get the right sort of ride under Franny Norton, King of Chester. But I'm going to go side shot. I just wonder whether the ground was to blame, really, for him last time out. There's heavy ground, and I know that he ran well on it at Newmarket, but that was horrendous conditions at Haydock. They were practically swimming when he last ran. Before that, I thought he'd been steadily going the right way. The Doncaster race that he won, the time of that was pretty good, and it suggests that he's not on a bad mark for John and 30 Gosden. So I'll just go with him back on a quicker surface, really, to drop his head in front, hopefully. But it wouldn't be a strong view by any stretch of the imagination. Finally, Mark, best bet of the weekend, your nap selection across the cards?
Well, I think Virginia Plain will take an awful lot of catching around Chester Saturday. 140 at Chester. By 141, I think she'll be in the winner's enclosure.
Okay. It was a toss-up for me. A horse called King of Clubs at Sandown in the 325. Quite liked his chances in that. But I'm going to go back to your 340, that big field sprint handicap, and Dark Shift for Charlie Hills coming out of stall 2 under Danny Tudhope. I think he could be on the right part of the track. I think he's really well handicapped, and you're going to get a fair enough price in a 17-runner handicap. So I'll nap Dark Shift in the 340 at York. That's it then for the weekend warm-up this week. We'll be back with you on Monday. It'll be myself or Martin, joined once again by Emma Spencer, who should be back with us. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you're back a few winners. Enjoy the weekend racing.